Welcome to the Ask Chris Real Estate Podcast with Chris Phillips from Keller Williams. A successful 20-year veteran in the Middle Tennessee real estate market with over 100 five-star reviews, Chris is known for his knowledge and integrity. Whether you're buying, selling, investing, or just curious, his insight will guide you along the way.
Three big contingencies: inspection contingency, appraisal contingency, and financing contingency. So let's talk about those three things real quick. We've already emphasized the inspection period, that contingency. What is a contingency? So let's talk about it. It means that it's a condition that is set in the purchase and sales agreement that has to be met for both parties to move forward. So in the inspection period, the buyer has to be satisfied with what they see in the condition of the property and what the mechanicals are in the condition, and they're in good working condition. If they're not, then both parties have to agree who is going to be responsible to bring that into working order, or if the buyer is going to accept that thing as is. Appraisal contingency, now this is where a third party comes in, and this is usually the bank, and we put in there that we check it that the buyer wants this property to be appraised for the purchase price of that house, and it doesn't appraise for the purchase price. The buyer is not obligated to buy that house at that price. It goes back into negotiation. And both parties have to agree to the purchase price. So the seller's not obligated to sell it at a lower price, but it's going to be a very hard thing to overcome for that seller if it's already been proven that the appraisal didn't meet. So the seller has three options then. He can either sell it to the buyer at a lower price, he can withdraw it off the market, or he can demand that the buyer pay the difference, or they split the difference. There's a lot of ways that happens. That protects the buyer. And then we have a financing contingency. In most cases, this one's kind of taken care of to protect the buyer through the process. And I always give the extreme in this answer. When I bring a buyer in, we've already got them pre-approved. They've went through the underwriting preliminary, so they've already checked their credit, they've checked their finances, they've verified all their income, they've looked at their bank records, and this person is financially able to purchase this house. However, if the buyer loses their job or their financial contingencies or finance changes, one of the buyers dies or is no longer able to provide an income, they're not obligated to move forward with purchasing that house. And that financial contingency remains in effect all the way through until you close. So the inspection contingency and the appraisal contingencies, those are satisfied at some time during the contract that we're working on getting it closed. And then the financial contingency goes all the way to the end. And that protects the buyer. So they're not obligated to move forward with it if they no longer qualify to buy the house. Sell a home contingency, we can talk about that. Now, this one is a sticky situation. I don't like sell a home contingencies on the buy side or the sell side. If I'm representing the buyer, the reason I don't like it on the buy side is because I lose leverage on my negotiation. It makes it very hard for me to negotiate a deal that is going to be favorable to my buyer when I'm coming from a weaker position of a sell a home contingency. However, in a buyer's market, the seller is welcoming that because they just want a contract because they know that they're not in a position of strength. So they're more likely to take a sell a home contingency during that time. Title contingency, that's on every property. The bank's not going to convey or give money to a property that cannot issue a clear title. Clear title means that there's nothing owed to anyone else on this property, and all of the debts have been satisfied, and it is conveyed without anybody having the rights to this property. And we want clear title, and we want to make sure that the title also gives a good legal description so that you're protected in that. And this is another thing. Buyers need to buy title insurance. I see this waived a lot, and I'm going to talk about this. This is a great example of why you need title insurance. I had a friend of mine, Nathan, who he was helping his sister out, and they bought or refinanced the property because his sister was getting the divorce. And Nate said, well, I'll help you get it refinanced, and we'll put it in my name too, and we will remove it from your ex-husband's or soon-to-be ex-husband's name, and you and I will own this property until you get back on your feet financially, and then you can just quit claim deed me off once you get it refinanced under your name. What happened is this husband had a lien against his business, and the lien against his business also went against the title of the property. They were alerted to this prior to closing, before they closed on this deal to refinance it to get the ex-husband off the property. However, they did not purchase title insurance, and because of this, they have to pay that lien off before she can refinance into her name. So now she's responsible for a debt that she didn't even incur, that was through her husband's business that had nothing to do with her, and now she's responsible for it. If this had not come up in the search and she had purchased title insurance, the title insurance would have conveyed to it, and they would have paid that debt if they had not seen this lien prior to closing and purchased the title insurance. So this would have put the brakes on the refinancing and said, look, we're not going to insure this property because there's a lien on it. And if we're going to issue you title insurance, you need to take care of this lien. But because they waived the title insurance, now they're responsible for the debt. And it's an awful thing. And I hated telling Nathan that basically he was either going to have to sue the ex-husband or just pay the debt. And obviously that's a sad situation. HOA disclosures, guys, HOAs are big. They have a lot of power, and you need to make sure you know what you're signing up for. So if you're the type of person that has boats, trailers, and RVs in your driveway, and you're not able to do that in your HOA, you need to know that before you agree to buy this house. And you need to do that during the due diligence period, the inspection period. You need to read those documents and look into that and make sure that you understand what the guidelines are for the HOA. HOAs have a lot of power, and they can wield a lot of headaches, and for buyers that are purchasing a property not knowing what they've really signed up for. And it can be very frustrating. Also, HOAs are really beneficial because they keep the values up. And I'm going to tell you, the properties that have the HOAs, as much as I'm not a big fan of HOAs, those property values stay up. So to me, having an HOA is not a negative, but those are things that you want to look for. So guys, I hope that kind of helps you out a little bit when you're talking about the purchase and sales agreement. We could go through this 11-page document, and I could go line by line and even give more detail. But when a buyer or seller are entering into a purchase and sales contract, they need to know what they're agreeing to, the timelines. All of these timelines are real important. And I'm going to tell you, that's one of the things that Kelly and I are really good at. We hit our timelines. I'm a stickler on that. I put all kinds of alerts so that we don't miss these timelines because they're crucial. And if you do miss it, it can wind up costing you a lot of money or put you in a situation that you're not going to be happy with. And Kelly and I make sure that never happens with us with the purchase and sales. So the final takeaways on this are going to be contingencies, buyer's protection. Know your deadlines, know your inspection deadlines, know your closing date, know when you're going to take possession of the property. Ask questions and read the contract carefully. And if you don't understand something, have the agent walk you through it and explain to you. And give him or ask that person to give you examples on the scenarios and when this would come into play, so that you can make sure you understand the contract. And work with an experienced realtor who protects your interests. That's what this contract's all about, is to protect both sides and to make sure you understand what you're doing. Our final takeaways with the 3 big contingencies is knowing your closing dates, knowing your deadlines, knowing that these contingencies protect you as a buyer. You need to ask questions of your realtor and make sure that you understand what you're signing with these contingencies, and get with a licensed realtor that understands the contract and how these 3 contingencies work in the purchase and sales agreement. Thanks for listening today with part 2 of Decoding the Purchase and Sales Agreement.
For answers to all your real estate questions, ask Chris at the Phillips Group, Murfreesboro, Tennessee.